This episode of the Concierge CPA is brought to you by none other than my own founded company that I am president of, which is Tax Plan IQ. We have released the most major core changes to Tax Plan IQ just recently. And if you've already checked it out in the past or never heard of it before, please do so because we are automating the creation of a tax plan down to seconds, if not minutes, per taxpayer. And we just reached over 1 billion in tax savings for our users. So we are making a radical change for the profession and for taxpayers alike and the tax literacy space. So check it out.
Welcome to the Concierge CPA. I'm Jackie Meyer, founder of the Concierge Accountant Program and Tax Plan IQ software. This is a podcast for accounting firm owners and influencers who are pursuing world-class service. We discuss their path to excellence, their daily habits, and what influences them and their work. We believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. Stick around till the end of the show. We'll reveal how you can be our next guest. Let's go, y'all.
Welcome to the Concierge CPA podcast. I'm Jackie Meyer, your host, where we get to the bottom line of the numbers for entrepreneurs and accountants. I have Nick Sinclair here, and he is are you founder and president and CEO, all of TOA Global, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Really excited to interview him today, hear about the world of outsourced accounting, what's going good, what's not going good. How can our listeners, learn a lot more about it and really get some good skills? So welcome, Nick. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here with you today.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about how did you get into the accounting world? How did you start this company?
Yeah, I'll give you a snapshot of my background. So I got into financial planning and financial advising when I was 21. So My parents lost everything when I was 18. They got probably some bad advice that, it wasn't the accountant's reason why they lost everything, but it was a contributing factor. And that really gave me this passion to get into advisory and never had anyone go through what they went through.
Yeah.
And I went through that journey as a firm owner. I owned a financial services company, then I owned an accounting practice, and then a mortgage broking. And we just continue to add more and more services to our clients to the point where I had the general challenges that everyone has. I was working what I call 2 shifts a day. I was working the day shift seeing clients.
Yeah.
I was then working the night shift doing emails and trying to do the work. And we were growing rapidly. We were growing, we just kept growing. Getting clients wasn't a challenge, keeping up with it was. And before I knew it, I was almost trapped within my business. And I was on a board for a group called Entrepreneurs Organization. And we actually were to the Philippines for a board retreat for our global leadership training to learn the roles that we were doing for the next year. And it was there that I really discovered having a back office. It opened my eyes up. One of our members was actually living there and invited us to go and have a look at what he was doing. And he was a removalist company, one of the largest in Australia, and he was generating about 4,000 leads a day. Anyone that listed their house for sale or for rent, he would be in contact with them within 48 hours. And sort of was a bit of a light bulb going, well, if there's an endless amount of talent here, I'm having challenges with just keeping up with the work. It's cost effective. Why don't I double down and build a team? And that's what I did. I built my own back office there, got it up and running. It was working really well. I was on a roadshow with a guy called Rob Nixon who coaches accounting firms. And
I've heard of Rob.
good old Rob's a good guy, and he this is a roadshow we did to 1,300 accountants in Australia and New Zealand called Capitalising on the Cloud. So Xero was just becoming a thing in Australia and New Zealand at the time. This is 12 years ago.
Okay.
And I was really there to talk about what I was doing with my back office. He was really, I suppose, leveraging what I was doing to talk about the move from compliance to advisory and how you needed to start running a better business. What I didn't know is that I'd have firms come up to me during that roadshow saying, Nick, love what you're doing. Don't want to set up in the Philippines. Do you have some spare desks? And I did at the time. And I ended up saying yes to that many firms during that roadshow that I had sold 90 people. And
Wow.
Suddenly and it turned into a mini business. And then the next year we went to 200 people, then we went to 400 people. And then I was like, well, this is a real business now.
Yeah.
I need to decide which one I want to do. I can't run a fast growing, financial services firm and an outsourcing business. So I made the decision that ultimately I can make a bigger impact helping accounting firms free up time rather than trying to give advice one-on-one through my own firm. So exited and merged out of my accounting and financial planning business, focused and doubled down on TOA. That was close to 11 years ago now. We're over 4,000 team members when we're putting on around 150 team members a month for accounting firms across 5 different countries now. So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, that is amazing. Oh my gosh, so many questions. So did you ever anticipate to have such a large company, or were you more entrepreneurial?
I was more entrepreneurial, and it took us where it did. I think I was in the right place at the right time, almost, with the industry moving to the cloud and global resourcing becoming a thing. And, I just continued to grow and grow. I mean, now, yes, I do see myself running a large business. I see ourselves with over 20,000 team members in more countries in the future. But
oh, wow. So you have big goals.
yeah, well, there's a huge talent crisis. And our aspirations are to provide the best accounting talent no matter where it is in the world, and to help accounting firms be able to be more proactive, to be able to scale and stop saying no to business and no to helping their clients because of capacity constraints.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so where are offices of TOA? I know we just talked about Fort Worth, Texas. You have one right down the road from me. You're in Australia. How does that work? How did you decide where to put offices and whatnot?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that we put offices. One is what we call growth regions, which is where our clients. So we have account management and people on the ground. So we have an office in Fort Worth, down the road from you. We have an office in Australia, which is obviously where I was born and raised. And then we have delivery centers at the moment in the Philippines. So we have offices across the Philippines. That's predominantly where the majority of our team are. Okay. And we've also got offices in South Africa. So they're the main regions at the moment, but we are expanding and opening and having a physical presence in Canada next year, as well as New Zealand. And we're looking at other delivery regions as well as South America and other places like that.
That's amazing. Okay. What would you say? I know probably so many lessons learned over the years, but what would you say is a saying or a learning that you've had that you're just like, wow, I keep coming back to this over the years. I'm so glad I learned this as I grew this company.
Yeah, I think there's a few. I've been coached the whole time, so I've always had coaches. And my coach said to me a couple of years ago, Nick, you only need to make 2 or 3 good decisions a year. You don't need to be involved in everything. Employ people that are smarter than you. Let them run and drive the business, and you just need to make 2 or 3 really, really big decisions through a year. Mm-hmm. And that was probably hard for me at the start because I love work, and I work a good amount of hours, and I make a lot of decisions, and I didn't quite understand what he was saying until I'd made a few key decisions that year. And I was like, that's what he was talking about. Just those critical few of the things that I need to make decisions on. So I need to clear the air, have more space to make the decisions that I need to make that will make the biggest impact to our team members and our business.
Mm-hmm. That's very good advice. I like it. And EO, Entrepreneurial Organization, I didn't realize that was worldwide. There's chapters here. Do you still recommend that to this day? I hear great things.
Yeah, so Vern Harnish actually started it, who wrote Scaling Up. So he's obviously American. So it was founded in America, and it is global. I'm no longer a member of it. Time permitting was probably the biggest challenge. A lot of my group, or a lot of those guys, retired, but I definitely recommend it for others. It was a fundamental part of my journey. It was definitely something that I learned a lot and built a lot of global connections and got a lot out of it. So I definitely recommend people go into it. The best thing about EO is it's not an organization necessarily for networking. It's an organization where you learn, and you got to have a thirst for learning. And the best part about it is you meet with a group of people every month, And you can't give advice unless you've actually had a shared experience in it. And that was the one thing I loved, is that, I always get advice unsolicited a lot of the time from people around how I should do things. And the funny thing is they've never actually done what they're giving me advice to do. So in EO, you can only give advice if you've actually lived that experience before, good or bad, but you can't give advice if you've never done it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. So with outsourced functions, what all do y'all provide? What are accounting firms kind of demanding or really needing right now? What's in high demand?
And I think that's the great thing about our model, which is slightly different to traditional outsourcing, where you send a job and get a job back. Our model is very much around what are the roles that you need within your accounting firm, and we provide them full-time dedicated people in the Philippines or South Africa. So the reality is whatever role you have locally, you could have in a global environment. So admin, accounting, marketing, sales, it doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Most firms, when they come to us though, they come to us for audit, or they come to us for tax, or they come to us for the bookkeeping CAS services. So that's traditionally what they start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, what we do is help them really clearly define what a people strategy is, which includes a global team strategy, a local team strategy, and really then mapping out a path to be able to grow in the future. Because the challenge most people make when they build a global team is they just naturally put everyone and anyone there. Mm-hmm. Or they only put certain roles there. They limit the types of roles that they've got there. We've got a firm actually in San Antonio that have 9 managers, and half of those managers are actually based in the Philippines managing US team members.
Wow.
But they've been a client of ours for a while. So they've been over 5 years. They've built the system. So the biggest thing you need to do is have a very clearly defined strategy. Where do you want it to go long term? Because you need to develop people. And the challenge is if you're not developing people locally, you'll have no one locally in 5 years. But equally, if you're not doing that globally, you're not going to have anyone in 5 years in a global environment at a senior level either.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. And you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation about how your parents struggled with advice and whatnot. What are your thoughts around advisory and how much accounting firms, financial advisors, everyone's kind of combining now anyways. Do you help support that transition towards advisory as well?
I think not necessarily supported in a formal education point of view. It's all around we free up firm owners' time.
Yeah.
And I think
Yes, I like that.
So
okay.
That's the big thing, is we help give capacity back to firms where they're struggling with capacity, which is ultimately leverage. And accounting firms, as you know, are all about leverage. The more leverage and capacity we have, the more we can help serve our customers and clients. And I think that's ultimately what we help firm owners do, because there's negative connotations in a lot of way about shifting to advisory, and compliance is dead. I think compliance is always going to be there, but the key is how do we add the most value to our clients? How do we help serve them in the most meaningful way? Because a lot of the time that is advice and that is advisory, and we can add more value. The clients don't understand it. We do need to sell our services to them if it's going to be of value to them. It's just making sure that it is valuable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. I think there are a lot of different directions there, but yeah, I love that point. I've coached accounting firms in the past. I have this tax advisory software, Tax Plan IQ, which, we're trying to pull all these people into tax advisory. And the biggest excuse or reason why they can't do it is because they don't have the time, right? And so you need to be able to delegate, outsource, move the compliance work so that you can move your time to those higher value services. And so you're allowing the firm owners to do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's giving people leverage, which is ultimately time. And I think that, it's not a matter of if you move to advisory, they need to move to it because their clients need it. They just don't know it. And it's our duty as their advisors to give them that advice. And that was where my parents' account went wrong. They did general compliance work. They did their tax returns. My parents were not as educated in running a business as they needed to be. It was their first business. They'd been in it for 10 years, but they still didn't know what they didn't know. And I think that's where I've always said that the accountant could have done more. They could have guided them and supported them to actually run a proper business rather than being just self-employed jobs.
Sure.
And that's where I think all accountants can add value is how do we help our clients with with the advice and the services that they really truly need, rather than what they're coming to us for, which is what they know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of harp on this all the time. I'm curious your perspective from, Australian compliance perspective versus the US, but I feel like our governing orgs don't give enough guidance or criteria or certifications around all the different things we can do. You just throw CPA or EA in a bucket and the clients just assume they do everything. And to me, I feel like there should be some more oversight so that things like what happened to your parents doesn't happen. And people know what that accountant can do and what they can't, because they can't do it all, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the challenge with our industry, is that some EAs and CPAs only do a very limited service. That's all they want to do. And others, provide all these range of services.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's up to us as an industry, and I think the industry bodies can definitely help support getting better knowledge of the true advice and value that accountants and CPAs and EAs actually do provide, because it's more than just filling out a tax return.
For sure. Do you think that the same problem exists globally, or is it more of a US-based issue, or what do you see?
No, 100%. I think that it's global issues.
Okay.
It's no different in America to Canada to Australia to New Zealand. It's the UK. It's pretty much.
Bummer. So no one solved this for us yet. Okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. So why do people, I mean, you kind of already addressed this, but I just want to hit it kind of head on. Why do firms need to outsource, and what is this kind of crisis that we're in right now? Do you see it all? Like, has it come together for you how this happened, and how you're able to really kind of solve those problems?
Yeah, I think it's, the talent shortage has been around the whole time I've been in the industry. It's just, I suppose now it's been really elevated and in the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
I think why do firms need to do it is, the reality is we live in a global world. The reality is that there is a shortage, there is a reduction of accountants going into the industry, and it's not going to get any better. So the reality is if you're not you don't have a global team, the reality is you're already behind. The majority of progressive firms, the majority of large firms are all doing this. Some are not doing it successfully yet, but they're learning and developing the skills to be able to do it. And AI is coming in. It's not going to replace us, but it's definitely going to enable us. It's definitely going to assist us.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is in the future, you're going to need to have a global workforce. You're going to need to utilize technology. But what that means is we need to accelerate careers quicker, because we're going to have a lot more senior people and managers required and less of the juniors, which really means that we need to be able to drive people's careers at a quicker rate than we ever have. And global talent is just going to be part of it. It's not a matter of if it will be, it is already. It's a critical piece to the puzzle, and we just need to embrace it and really maximize the value we can get out of it.
Yeah. You mentioned that the majority of your team are in the Philippines. Tell us more about kind of their work culture. I mean, are people like excited and wanting to like dive into this work? We complain about Americans not necessarily really wanting to do the work, right? So how does the culture differ?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're American territory for 48 years. So they're taught in the Philippines American English from birth, the schooling system, when I'm in the Philippines, to be honest, I feel like I'm in parts of America at time. A lot of the same.
Okay, yeah, I've never been. I'd love to visit someday. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 7,500 islands, 2 of the top 10 in the world. So there's the beautiful side of it, and then there's obviously the city side of it as well, it's a great country. But I think that the reality is that we get over 4,000 applications a month applying for the jobs that we have. So there's a huge amount of talent over there. And the difference is it's one of the top 5 professions in the Philippines, and they love working for international companies. They love working for international firms. And I think that's one of the great things is their approach to how they do things is very much community first, then it's family, then it's personal. It's almost the opposite to the Western world, which is me, 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 me. Oh, maybe a bit about family and maybe a little bit about community. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that's probably the extreme, but yeah, the Filipino work culture is second to none. It was one of the reasons why we've been able to grow so successfully to what we are today, is because of their work ethic. And the reality is they are world-class. They're really, really capable and strong accountants, which is why, again, we've been able to grow so quick because of their capability.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. You mentioned a lot of the bigger firms are already outsourcing, some successfully, some not. Where is it going wrong versus like how you found it to go right?
Yeah, look, we've seen the good, bad, and ugly. We've got over 1,000 accounting firms using us today.
Wow.
And the challenge is that where firms go wrong is they treat it like an outsourced labor. They treat them like they're just in another country. I'm going to send them the work. I'm not going to communicate with them. I'm not going to treat them like I would a local team member. And as soon as you do that, it doesn't work. You need to treat them like one of your own team members, and do all the things that you would do with a local team member, because they too have choice of jobs. So they're not going to stick around if you're not communicating with them, if they don't have a career with you where they're progressing. They're not going to, I think the biggest challenge a lot of firm owners have is they just don't communicate effectively enough, and they don't know how to train remotely either.
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm not an EO. I do that every time. Sorry, Chris. I'm not an EO, but I'm in a different group called C12 that's a similar concept. And we have this kind of accountants of C12. We meet every quarter on Zoom, and TOA comes up consistently. And it's because of that particular reason. People are saying, these are like our own teammates. You know, we get together with them. We're not just treating them like we're just outsourcing this work and they're like on a totally, separate island or whatever. So that's what kind of stood out to me about your company, is that like kind of family team culture that you try to instill in people. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key parts of success with the firms where they make it work, is that we are the people that facilitate the relationship. That's the way that we look at it. The relationship's not about TOA, it's about the team member and the client. And for all to be successful, the client needs to be doing their part, the team member needs to do their part, and we need to be able to support and enable it. And we want them to treat it like it is their own team. It just happens to be a Philippines office now.
Sure. Okay. Now, tell me a little bit more specifics about how your process works, because every company is a little different. So I come to you and I say, hey, I need a bookkeeper. Do you go find that talent that has the experience level that I'm asking for at that point, and then you connect us, they become that, full-time member of our team, and then we kind of run from there? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so we're like a bit like a recruitment agency. You'd bring the job description that you want to us. We would then basically go and source the talent for you. You would then interview 3 to 4 people. You would then choose the person that you want. Typically, it's then a 30-day wait. They need to finish their other role like they would locally. And then they would commence with us and you at that point in time.
Okay, cool. Now, who would not be a good fit for outsourcing? I mean, you said you need to be able to communicate, treat people like people, right? I mean, yeah. I get that. But is a firm too small, or are there certain parameters that you're like, oh, there's some red flags here. I don't think you're quite ready for that outsource solution?
So you're never too small or too big. So we've got the smallest client we have is a sole practitioner, and the only team they have is with us. And we go right up to the other end of the spectrum with our American clients, where our largest client's one of the top 10. So they're a $1.6 billion accounting firm, and we've probably got everything in between. So there's no size isn't really a prohibitor or enabler. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing that is are you wanting to build a global workforce? Do you have systems and process? And if you don't, are you willing to invest the time to learn how to be a great leader and how to invest in your local team? Because it is an investment. It's not something where you just put someone on another part of the world and you never go and visit them. They never come to you. You need to really invest in building a global team, which means you need to travel and see the team. You need to learn skills to manage and train and drive a remote team that you may not have now. But more importantly, if you're a firm owner, you need to invest in your local team to give them the skills to be able to enable it, because where it doesn't work is where people are great technicians, but they're poor leaders. Yeah. And that is, for me, is if you're not willing to invest in it, then don't waste your time starting to build a team, because you're suddenly going to build a team that you're going to be really reliant on in another part of the world that you're not willing to actually do the things to make it successful.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's crazy. 15, 18 years ago when I was at Deloitte doing my bare minimum time, I was just this lowly little associate staff in the international tax division, and they put me in charge of building this brand new India team at Deloitte. So it was quite the experience. And one thing I regret is like they were almost about to send me on assignment to India, which would have been the coolest experience ever, but I just couldn't last. I had to get out of there. But it's like amazing how far things have come now. But there's still some cultural barriers. So I have a doctorate in leadership that I just received a few weeks ago, actually. And so I studied a lot about international culture and the way that we communicate with one another. Are there nuances to the Philippine culture that you would say when you're communicating with them? You have like tips or tricks around ways to better understand one another?
Yeah, and that's probably, there's two parts to that. Is one is you do need to get to know them like as human beings and understanding who they are and what motivates and drives them. A big part of the Philippines culture is that it is a culture of pleasing. So they don't want to let you down. It's a community first culture. So when they don't want to let you down, they're not going to necessarily come out until you've built that trust with them. Now, when they've been a team member of yours for a period of time, and you've built the connection with them, they'll share everything with you, probably too much in some cases.
Okay.
But the reality is, in the early days, if you haven't built that relationship, they'll just want to, because it's a cultural pleasing, they won't want to tell you that they don't understand. So you'll train them, and then you'll say, look, do you understand? And can you go and do the work? They'll say, yes, 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 yes. And then they'll be they'll just sit there and they'll be stuck. They'll be trying their hardest to remember. Mm-hmm. But they won't want to admit to you, no, I didn't, you're speaking too fast, or I didn't quite understand what you meant by this, or can you show me this again? So it's not a culture where they'll turn around and say that until they've built that rapport and relationship with you. So I think that's one of the tricks, is to understand, I call it a training loop, is when you train someone, ask them to then demonstrate them doing the work, as opposed to just saying, look, here it is, this is how you do it. Mm-hmm. I always add that step in to go, can you now show me it? I'm going to watch you while you do it.
Ooh, that is a really good tip. So I would say I would add on to that, even from the first time you interview someone. I remember I had a firm for 12 years that I sold the year before last, and I did a Zoom interview with somebody, and I was like, what would you say your level of QuickBooks experience is, 1 to 10? And they're like, oh, I'm a solid 8, right? And you're like, wow, that's good. And then I'm like, go ahead and show me how to pull a P&L in QuickBooks. They couldn't find the report. And I'm like, how do you not know where this report is? This is like everything we do every day in an accounting firm. Yep, so that is like exactly what I recommend for people to do, is have that feedback loop from the first time you're interviewing all the way to that training, which I didn't think as much about it on that side. So I love that idea. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so I would say that we had similar cultural differences with the Indian team at Deloitte. And what's unfortunate is that without appropriate education around the cultural differences, Americans will assume that they're not trustworthy because they're being agreeable or saying, yes, of course I can do this. But it's not that at all. It's about them wanting to please you, right? Like you said. And so it's really I think important to set the stage early on, hey, here's some baseline differences in the way that our cultures are. This is how to handle it, and just be on the lookout for it. I don't think people talk about that enough.
No, and that's, to be honest, one of the ways that we've been able to do that is we've built a course which is called Offshore Best Practice. So it's an 8-module course. It's a full-day program that we take all new clients through to teach them how to actually build and manage a global team, because there's so many aspects. I mean, the culture is one aspect of it, the way that they approach things. There's so much to learn with building a global team, and we've seen the good, bad, and ugly. We've seen the train wrecks. We've seen the things the firms that have been absolutely nailing it, like the example I used earlier, which they've got managers in the Philippines managing US team members. and everything in between. And we've got the playbook to be successful with doing it, which is why we train our new clients and our existing clients. We've got a full-time trainer that just does that, because it is such a different change to managing people locally. There's nuances that if you get them right, it will be really successful. And if you don't do it, it'll be a disaster, which we've all heard the disaster stories.
Right. That's awesome. I love it. So let's talk about the future of the profession a little bit. We touched a little on AI coming in. We're, now that we've all settled into natural language processing and all that stuff, ChatGPT over the last year, we're realizing, okay, yeah, this probably won't replace us. This will enable us to do higher level services, just like you said. What does that future look like for firms, though? And do you think about that a lot? Like, are the services and work that you're supplying in these roles, is it going to change drastically? Or do you think that it will be more of a, many, many years to come thing with, like you said, compliance is going to be around for a long time, right?
I think it'll evolve and develop. I think that if we look back at when cloud accounting came in, I remember Xero was obviously huge in Australia. It was born in New Zealand, and that was apparently going to replace us and take us out. And I look back now and say to anyone that's using cloud technology really in any software in the accounting industry now, how much has it actually stopped you from doing your work? Are you quieter now? Have you got less work to do now than you did 11 years ago? And the answer is never. It's never, yeah, we're not doing anything. It's saved us significant time, but now we've replaced it and filled it with other things. And I think that's it. What AI is going to do, I think AI will have a bigger impact than cloud accounting. It will definitely accelerate at a faster rate, but it just means the type of work that we're going to be doing is going to be very different. We're seeing a lot more data analytics and data analysts roles that are coming in, particularly over the last few years with the progressive firms. So we're seeing the role shift to be more around now storytellers as opposed to data entry or creating the financials. We're now starting to see a lot more of the roles are predictive analysis or analytical type roles. So I definitely think the industry will evolve, our roles will evolve, but we'll never be replaced. We're a service-based business. We're a business that does rely on the human connection and the human relationship. And I think that will always be. I think we'll always have our role. It's just going to evolve and, probably at a little bit of a quicker rate than what cloud accounting did, but probably not as fast as what I think a lot of people think it will be.
Sure. Yeah. I could see that for sure. What would you say is the biggest problem that smaller accounting firms face today?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that they face is they're technicians with a team. They're not actually running businesses because they're so buried doing the work.
Yeah. I mean, I felt guilty when you mentioned that before because that was me too. I mean, I was a technician, turned into my own firm, wanted to hoard all the work for myself, didn't delegate, ended up, with health problems and whatnot because I wouldn't let go of the work. So I can totally identify with that.
And I think that's the challenge is that we're not running businesses. We've created a job for ourselves and we can't really give the best service and level of advice to our clients if we're buried doing the work. If you're a firm owner and you're still doing the work, we have a methodology called the accountant's leverage ladder, which is, you need to get out of the admin work. Then you need to get out of the technical work. Then you need to get out of the QA and reviewing. It's where do you fit within your business? If you were to treat it as a business, what's the best role for you? And if it's a technician, then employ people to run the firm. Even small firms need to really, in my opinion, be run like businesses more than run as I'm a grading accountant and I'm going to put a team around me to help me do the work.
Mm-hmm. And what resources or books or programs would you recommend to someone that's like, oh, shoot, that's me. I'm a technician. I need to become kind of a better leader and whatnot.
Yeah, look, one of the most impactful books that I've read, particularly in the last 12 months, is one from a guy called Danmartell, a Canadian guy called Buy Back Your Time.
I love Danmartell. Yeah, he's great. Buy Back Your Time. Yes.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be on I flew over to Kelowna, which is where his house is, and spent a couple of days with him in the mastermind earlier this year. And
that's
for me, it's around, it was cool. But I think the biggest learning that I've got from him is around how do you buy back your time to be doing the meaningful work that actually matters, which you actually enjoy doing more. So That was a huge one for me, particularly in the last 12 months, just learning how to really maximize my time so that I can then spend it. He's got a buyback loop, which is really auditing your time and then refilling it with the work that is more meaningful. And that's definitely helped enable me to take it to another level. I've always been relatively good at that, but it's now taking it to another level.
So what's like a practical tip that you have that you learned that other people could implement from buying back your time?
Yeah, I think it's around that audit, the buyback loop. So it's really around, and I've been very structured with my diary for the last 10 years. My diary's planned 18 months in advance. I have a fully loaded year, so I understand, family holidays go in there first and then all the business stuff fills it up. But for me, it's around, I regularly audit my diary. So I look at my time. I've got an EA. I've had one for over 11 years that manages my diary and my emails. And I don't do emails. She manages them. I spend about 15 to 20 minutes a day on email and that's it. But the big tip is that I audit my diary on a regular monthly basis with her, and we look at the colors of the diary. It's all color coded. And am I spending my time on the right things? Am I investing my energy and my focus on the areas that are going to be the most impactful and have the biggest benefit to the business and to myself? Or is it filled with things that someone else should be doing? And when I audit that, I then look at what should I give to someone else to do? So what can I then delegate? And then when I delegate that, I then look at, well, what do I refill it with? How do I make sure that when I've created this space and this time, that I'm actually spending it on things that are going to move the needle in a more meaningful way?
That's awesome. I love it. I was actually in danmartell's coaching program for SaaS companies when I first started Tax Plan IQ. It's very practical stuff. But yeah, that's a great book recommendation. I love it. All right. So on that note, we'll kind of wrap up. We've talked about your favorite book. That's always important. We talked about biggest challenges. Anything else that you'd like our listeners to know about?
I think the big one that I always add in is that if we want to have a company where team members love working with us, we need to be inspirational. We need to be passionate about what we do. And I think that's one thing that lacks in a lot of accounting firms, is that we don't always show up as great leaders and we don't inspire our team and really remind them of the impact we have to our clients that we do serve. And if we want to grow a good firm and we want to attract the best talent, we need to also be the best leaders and be the most inspirational leaders. And I think that's one thing for me, is just, check how you show up, because it really does matter when you've got a team. They watch you and they follow you. So please, be the inspiring leader that they want and they need to grow their careers. Don't get caught into, I'm busy and it's just a challenging industry. It's a great industry. We all need to be out there really promoting it in the most positive way we can.
Yeah, that's great. So how do you show up? That spurs that question. When everything's so virtual now, do y'all do like virtual happy hours, or like what are some of these like practical ways that you can really show up for your team?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're still predominantly in office. So we've got over 60% of our workforce in office. We've got an amount that are in hybrid or flexible environment, and then we've got some that are remote. And I think that no matter what work environment it is, you need to double down. So if they are remote, you need to have a prescribed systems and process for how you're going to manage the communication, how you're going to manage these team communication, so that everyone still feels like you do when you are 100% in office. So for me, it's around having culture, systems and process in place. Particularly if you're remote, it's a lot harder. How do you still have that same system of celebration and recognition and enabling support when team members need it? And it all comes back to just having very clearly defined system and process to enable that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Well, I have to shout out to Shirley Koss, because she's the one that kind of brought us together. I met her at probably 5 different conferences over last year, and she became my immediate bestie. So go see Shirley if you want to talk about TOA. She can fill you in and get you hooked up with all the details there. I really appreciate your time today, Nick. This was really, really good stuff. I hope that our listeners got some great insights out of it, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Super excited. And yeah, go and see Shirley. She's an absolute legend. And yeah, super excited that she's on our team.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Concierge CPA, hosted by Tax Plan IQ. We believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. If you are a successful accounting firm owner or influencer who would like to be on this program, please visit JackieMeyerCPA.com, JackieMeyerCPA.com to apply. Please share this on social media and rate us so we can continue our good work. Join our Facebook group called Accounting Firm Influencers, or connect with me on most platforms under Jackie Meyer CPA. Thanks for being accountable to transforming our industry today.